You got it? You got it?
Yeah.
Is that the train you catch?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Are in Coach 1000 with those open windows built in 1925 by the Pullman Company for the Southern Railway. Now take a good look at Grand Junction as we depart here. We'll be returning in a day or two, a week at the most. You're traveling on one of the first railroads into Chattanooga today. This line was completed in 1859 by the East Tennessee and Georgia Railroad. The ET&G would merge with a number of other railroads over time to become the famous Southern Railway in 1894. The Southern would continue to use this 3-mile stretch of track until they abandoned it in the 1950s for reasons I'll explain later in our journey. They built a new line to the north, which you can see to the right of the train now up on that embankment. That line is still used today by the Southern Railway successor, the Norfolk Southern Corporation. Then, of course, after this line was abandoned, they would eventually donate the 3 miles to us here at the museum. To the left of the train, you'll see a gravel road. That gravel road down there is the roadbed for the original 1859 right-of-way. The line was elevated to its current height and position in the first decade of the 20th century by the Southern Railway due to numerous occasions of flooding. Chattanooga used to be extremely prone to flooding before the construction of the Chickamauga Dam during the Great Depression. As an example of this flooding on the left, in just a few seconds, you'll see a sign. Next to that sign will be a tree with a yellow line painted on it. That yellow line represents the high water mark from the Great Flood of 1867. At 9 feet above the track, it explains why this line had to be elevated. We're now crossing our first bridge over South Chickamauga Creek. In the water below, you may spot some turtles, river otters, or geese. Now, just to the left is a set of stone piers. Those stone piers mark the side of the original bridge. On top of those stone piers would have been a wooden decking that the rails would have run on. The original bridge in that location was made entirely of stone and was washed away in a flood in 1861. Unfortunately, an engineer did not see that that bridge had washed away in time, and, well, let's just say he and his train went for a swim. We're about to cross our second bridge over the Western and Atlantic Railroad. This line you'll see below us there was the first line into Chattanooga, being completed by the state of Georgia in 1850. That line runs from Atlanta to Chattanooga and is still owned by the state of Georgia today. They currently lease it out to CSX. That line is also home to a very famous story from the Civil War. Some of you may have heard of it, and that would be the Great Locomotive Chase. Now, for those of you that have not heard of it, the Great Locomotive Chase is the story of Union spy James Andrews and 23 others known as Andrews Raiders. They disguised themselves as civilians and made their way to Big Shanty, Georgia, which is today Kennesaw, Georgia, and stole a locomotive named General while it was on a fuel, water, and mill stop. They planned to race the General all the way north to Chattanooga while burning bridges and destroying track and telegraph wires along the way in an effort to sever the crucial Confederate supply artery. They were pursued by the General's conductor, William Fuller, in a locomotive he commandeered named the Texas. The Texas was facing south, so for the duration of the chase, he had to run the locomotive in reverse. The General ran out of fuel just north of Ringgold, Georgia, about 18 miles down the track from Chattanooga. All the men were caught. 8 of them, including Andrews himself, were unfortunately hung in Atlanta. They are today buried at the Chattanooga National Cemetery around a bronze replica of the General, just a few miles from our current location. The rest of the men either escaped the prison or were exchanged for Confederate prisoners. Andrews Raiders were the very first to ever receive the Medal of Honor, but Andrews himself did not, as he was a civilian and not eligible. If you'd like to know more on the topic, there are many books and films based on the event, including Buster Keaton's silent film The General, and one of Walt Disney's lesser-known films from the 1950s, also titled The Great Locomotive Chase. Both locomotives involved in the chase are still preserved today. The Texas is on display at the Atlanta History Center in Atlanta, Georgia, and the General is on display at the Southern Museum of Civil War and Locomotive History in Kennesaw, Georgia. For those of you riding in Coach 906 with the green wristbands, you may notice that midway through this car there's a wall that separates the two halves of the coach. That is because when this coach was built, it was known as a Jim Crow car, used during the era of segregation. When the Interstate Commerce Commission desegregated the railroads in 1955, most cars of this type had the walls removed, but for some reason this one here was kept intact. We're not really sure why it was. Now, after we acquired the car, we made the decision to preserve the wall in its original condition as a reminder of a very unfortunate time in our nation's past. To use it as a teaching tool, we are a museum after all. It is believed to be that this coach is the only coach in operating condition in the world today, but that wall is still preserved. We're crossing our third bridge now over Tunnel Boulevard. Originally, this road you'll see would have tunneled underneath the railroad, hence the name. After the Southern Railway abandoned this line in the 50s, the roof of the tunnel was opened up to avoid maintenance costs. After the land was donated to us, we put a bridge over that gap, so today we have Tunnel Boulevard without a tunnel. Now to the right, I'll point out some of my favorite trees we have along the line. There's this one, and this one, and this one here with leaves on it. Now we're making our climb up Missionary Ridge, but rather than travel over it, we are going to travel through it, through the Missionary Ridge Tunnel, also known as the Whiteside Tunnel. This tunnel is 986 feet long, about the length of 3 football fields. It was completed in 1858, dedicated in 1859, and was excavated entirely by pick and shovel, as dynamite was not invented until 1867. So I guess you could say it went off without a bang. This tunnel was excavated from both ends of the ridge, meeting in the middle. When both portals did meet in the middle, they were only off center from each other by 3 inches. During World War II, this tunnel would see as many as 70 trains a day. This tunnel is the reason the line here was eventually abandoned. After World War II, the railway's equipment was becoming too large to fit the pre-Civil War era tunnel. Also, at the time, the tunnel was single-track, while the rest of the line was double-track, creating a major bottleneck. So that new line was built just to the north and bypassed the ridge altogether. If you have a flashlight app on your cell phones, I do encourage you to have those out at this time to shine them out the windows and illuminate the tunnel walls as we pass through so you can view them. For those of you riding in the blue car, well, they can't hear me. The whistle's blowing with the windows open, so I'll just wait. Those of you in the blue car with those open windows, for your safety, please keep all body parts inside the train at all times in the tunnel, as distance between us and the tunnel walls is less than 10 inches at times. This tunnel cost an arm and a leg to build over 160 years ago, and we paid for it to cost you an arm and a leg to travel through it, so please keep them in the train. now on the west side of Missionary Bridge. You can imagine traveling on a Southern Railway passenger train in the early 20th century, as this is how you would have approached downtown Chattanooga, right through the tunnel there, with your final destination being Terminal Station, which has today been converted into the Chattanooga Choo Choo Hotel.
72.
Okay. But did not show up. It was supposed to be 80. Of course, passenger trains back then would have consisted of more than just passenger coaches. For example, there might have been a baggage car, an RPO car, sleeping car, lounge car, on some trains even a dome car or an observation car. Then on most trains was my favorite, the dining car. Speaking of dining car, who knows how a steam locomotive eats? It choo-choo-choos. Now, we have almost reached the end of the 3 miles of track donated by the Southern Railway, so in about 5 more minutes or so, we'll be coming to a stop at our East Chattanooga Depot. Once there, you do have the option of either staying on board the train for the layover, or joining me as we do a demonstration of our turntable as we spin the locomotive around for the return trip. And I do highly encourage everyone to join me for this demonstration, as this is one of the only places left in the world where you can still see what's about to take place. So if you stay on board, you're going to be missing quite a bit of the experience. If anyone needs to use the restroom over here at East Chattanooga, there will be restrooms available in the East Chattanooga Depot, which will be to the right of our train, just right next to us when we get there. Please remain seated once we do come to a complete stop. We'll be unloading the train by car color to help with social distancing, so please wait until your car color is called. Once you do exit the train, take a left turn down the stairway or the ramp, follow that halfway down to the turntable. Then after we have everyone gathered around the turntable, we will begin the demonstration. Now before we get there, I am also required to say, by order of the health department, please keep a 6-foot distance from those other parties around you while at the turntable. And when returning to the train, please return to the same car and seat you were in at this time. So please take note of your car color. It is either red, green, yellow, or blue. And then depending on the car, if you look above the windows or up on the baggage rack, you will find your seat numbers. We will need you to return to those same seats. Now, as we start around this corner here, to the left, you're going to see some items covered by tarps. I'm asked about those all the time. Underneath those tarps are diesel motors that are used inside diesel locomotives. The ones under the tarps there are used motors that we have stored here for spare parts when needed. Also to the left will be a large brick building. That building is the warehouse where we keep many artifacts stored that are not currently on display. In front of that warehouse, you'll see a blue coach. That blue coach is one of our operational dining cars that we rotate in and out on those longer trips that include meal services. When this museum was first founded in 1961, the Southern Railway originally only donated a 1.5 miles of track, and that track began right here at East Chattanooga. So if you were to visit in the first 2 decades of our operation, you would have gotten on the trains here, ridden 1.5 miles to the other side of the tunnel, and then reversed back. In the 80s, the Southern Railway did donate another 1.5 miles of track for a total of 3 miles overall, which also allowed us to connect to the Grand Junction site. We then converted Grand Junction to the main museum campus and converted this site into what I like to call the industrial side, where all the manual labor takes place that is required to ensure the continued operation of the railroad. Now, to the left, after we finish getting around the warehouse, you'll see another large building to the left. It'll say Tennessee Valley Railroad Sole Shop on the front. That building is the back shop, where we do all of our repairs, maintenance, and restoration on all of the equipment. All the cars and locomotive you're riding on today has been restored in that very building. In the same direction, coming up, you'll see a large pile of coal. That coal is, of course, the fuel source for the locomotive pulling our train today. right, everyone. Welcome to East Chattanooga. As you can see here, we have reached the end of the line. So we're going to pull the locomotive onto this turntable and spin it around 180 degrees for the return trip to Grand Junction. This table you're looking at here was constructed in 1916 by the American Bridge Company and was used by the Central of Georgia Railroad in Macon, Georgia at the Roundhouse. That is up until 1925 when they sold it to a short line based out of Cedartown, Georgia. Now, we acquired the table in the 80s, moved it to this location, and we've had it in use here ever since. It is 80 feet long, and it weighs in at 80 tons. Keep in mind, the average school bus only weighs about 6 or 7 tons. That locomotive there weighs in at 215 tons. So when it is on the table here, the overall weight between the two is going to be sitting very close to 300 tons. So it may surprise you to know that this table was originally turned by hand. It was an Armstrong table. There would have been poles extending off each end, and it would have taken 4 people to push those poles to spin the table around. Do we have any volunteers? We're going to need 4. We got 1, 2, 3. One more. 4. Come on over. Yeah, I'm just kidding. We don't do it that way anymore. I got you. Now, for safety reasons today, we just use a small 25 horsepower motor under the operator shed here that our conductor Dave will be operating.
They said they needed 4
Now, our locomotive today is the Southern Railway 4501, built in 1911 by the Baltimore Locomotive Works in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. It was built for the Southern Railway as a mainline freight locomotive. It was retired from the Southern Railway in 1948. At that time, it was sold to the Kentucky and Tennessee Railway in Stearns, Kentucky, to be used in a coal drag service, bringing coal down from the mine. It was then again retired from that railroad. It was then purchased by one of our co-founders here at the museum, Paul Merriman, for $5,000 of his own cash, brought to Chattanooga under his own power in the 60s, and has been in operation both here at the museum and on mainline excursions on and off ever since. This locomotive is classified as a 282 Mikado, and what that means is it has 2 small pilot wheels in the front, the 8 large driving wheels in the middle, and a set of 2 trailing wheels under the cab and firebox. The term Mikado comes from the fact that the very first locomotive ever built with this wheel arrangement was sold to a state railway in Japan, so they gave it the Japanese term for the word emperor. This was also the very first 282 ever purchased by the Southern Railway. Of hundreds they had eventually purchased, and ironically enough, it is the only Southern Railway 282 that survives today. It was also the first piece of equipment acquired by the museum, and is still to this day the most famous piece of equipment we have in the collection. This locomotive operates at 205 psi. It has 63-inch diameter driving wheels, and it produces 53,900 pounds of tractive effort, which is the equivalent of about 2,500 horsepower. If you ever look up in the cab there, you'll see our engineer Bill. He is responsible for operating this locomotive and getting us here and back safely today. So everyone go ahead and give him a raise. Now the way this locomotive operates is under the cab there are firemen running speeders 3 to 600 total a day in the fire alarm for the burn. On the front side of the fire alarm, there are a series of computers that will link to the boiler, those are called the flues. On gas from the fire, the computers and then on gas to stack. So when we leave in the fire box to the wall, so it will keep it that with our gas to the steam. Then of course, there's a fan away from the boiler pressure and the fire. The boiler is that water, that's still filling out the cylinders here in the fire engine. Now the cylinders are going to have 6 switches on the outside. Those switches are connected to the rods here in the fire engine. And those rods are connected to the drive roll. So as the switches are being moved around, and it rotates the rods, so it's running the driving wheels and powering the locomotive. And so that's what has been used. It hits the hot gas and the smoke box in the front and it shoots up and out the stack. And that exhausting steam is what creates the chugging sound from the AC locomotive. Now the reason these locomotives are going to be replaced by the DC locomotive is for one thing, and that one thing is money. The steam locomotives are much more expensive all around. For example, they spend much more time down to repairs and maintenance. They spend much more money on lubricant for all the exterior moving parts. And spend more money on the fluid because steam locomotives have to have 2 cylinders while you don't need one. Then, of course, the fuel on steam locomotives is much more expensive as well. common misconception is power was a reason. Power is actually not a reason these locomotives were replaced. For example, for this 1911 Mustang locomotive with about 2,500 horsepower, diesel locomotives did not reach the 2,500 horsepower mark until about the mid-60s. If you have a look up in the cab again, you'll see our fireman Brian. He's responsible for feeding that fire as well as maintaining the water level and the boilers to keep all the steam engine operating on. Without him, we wouldn't be going anywhere. So give him a word as well. A lot of you have probably seen this locomotive before and don't even realize it, but I've been using many home patrols of musical videos. For example, we keep my Johnny Cash and quite a few occasions in the 50s videos, and in films such as Full Freight, and most famously the 1999 film October Style starring Jake Gyllenhaal. Not only this locomotive, though, our entire property and other equipment are used in film production very often as well. In the past 15 years alone, we've been involved in the productions of Leatherhead with George Clooney, Water for Elephants with Robert Pattinson, and most recently 42, which had with Bozeman and Harrison Ford. Now, as you can see, we've lined the locomotive up with track 2, even though our train currently sits on track 1. That is so we can do a runaround. What that means is the locomotive is going to go past our train and through a switch. We'll then reverse through a switch to hook up to the opposite side of our train and pull us back the other direction. So what was the front is now the back and vice versa. Now that we've completed turning the locomotive around, if anyone has any questions, feel free to come up and ask me at this time. I'll be happy to get those questions for you. For those of you who don't have questions, you can start making your way back to the train for the return trip to Grand Junction. Please make sure you do return to the same car and seats you rode in on the way over. And also don't forget that all restrooms available in the depot.
Y'all doing okay?
Oh, yeah.
All right, everybody doing okay over here? All right. Everybody doing okay? You take care, bro? Doing okay?
In just a few minutes, we'll be arriving back at Grand Junction Station. We do thank everyone for riding with us today at the Tennessee Valley Railroad Museum and hope you did enjoy your excursion. If you do choose to visit with us again in the future, we do offer many other longer trips that you can choose from, such as the Dinner on the Diner, the Chickamauga Return, the Somerville Steam Special, as well as our holiday-themed trips throughout the year, such as the Halloween Erie Express and the North Pole Limited, our annual Day Out with Thomas, and lastly, our Hiwassee trips out of Etowah, Tennessee. And we do thank you for your patience and understanding today as we implement health department guidelines to ensure your safety on board. Again, please remain seated. Once we do come to a complete stop, we'll be unloading again by car color. Once you do exit the train, if you'd like to go back into the station for anything, we do have to ask that you walk around the building and enter through the front door, as there are designated entrance and exit doors at this time. Once inside, if you're looking for any recommendations, the gift shop does have a feature-length documentary available titled And Then There Was One. It is the full history of the locomotive that has pulled the train today, the Southern Railway 4501. The deli also has some locally made ice cream available from Clumpy's Ice Cream Company, including 2 original flavors that you can only get here. Those are the Smokin' Cinders and the Rocky Railroad flavors. If you'd like to see the locomotive turn around for our next trip, it will be doing so using the Y, the triangular-shaped junction of track that surrounds the station here to our right. If you walk to the front side of the station, it's a good opportunity to watch that take place. We'll also be parking the locomotive for about 5 minutes next to the pedestrian crossing in front of the station if you want, for an opportunity for you to get a much closer look at the engine as well as to take some photos with it if you want to. So don't forget to take advantage of that. Please don't forget any personal items before departing the train, such as hats, glasses, keys, wallets, purses, cell phones, husbands, wives, and kids. If you did enjoy the trip today, my name is Zach with an H. If you did not enjoy it, in that case, my name is Zach with a K.
26. Stay 10. Coming in at 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's beautiful. Oh, that's the flash cam right there.
You getting it?
Yeah.
go to the car?
Okay.
Come on, bring it over this way.
You got it? Where is it?
It's backing up.
Oh. Let me know when we can go.